Well, I am today having the pleasure of welcoming Tania Elfersy to the podcast. And I'm so excited to share this valuable message with my community and with any other listeners that happen to stumble upon this podcast. I came across Tania via a podcast interview. One podcast that I follow based on the principles. I can't recall what it was, but it was love at first sight. Well, love at first listen. Her message so resonates and aligns with my message. So so many things. Tania and I spoke a little bit before we hit record, and there's just so many directions that we could go. So we're going to kind of just let the flow direct us. We're going to be talking about perimenopause and menopause, and I think we both see it as a beautiful invitation, or even perhaps a wake-up call into self-discovery, to bring women into a deeper knowing of who they really are. And I like to start high level, but then we can't help but go to, the problem, the challenges that women are facing, in that perimenopause and menopause has been pathologized. It's not a disease, and I'm sure we'll do some exploration of that. So I'm very excited, though, to talk about menopause, because I am of that. Well, I'm post menopause, and I really see it as a portal to a new chapter of life for women who are of that age. So Tania, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes. So I am 54. Women want to know where I am. I'm in the menopause stage. And over 10 years ago, I started experiencing symptoms that I had no clue what they were about. And that took me on a journey to discover about perimenopause, about menopause, healing my symptoms. I then became a transformative coach. I was already an author of a book on motherhood. I now have a book on perimenopause and menopause. I'm a mother of 3, married to my love, and we live a joyful life together. And I'm delighted that I have an opportunity to share in my work what's really become a passion, which is waking women up to the brilliance of their bodies. And what would be a pleasant way to say, shooing away the very old patriarchal, misogynistic messages about midlife change that have been spread for a very long time. And it's high time that women could have a different experience of perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing too about your personal life and your age. People want to know these things.
Yes.
So if we start high level, what is the biggest, deepest, most expansive takeaway? Let's just start there, and then we can go granular. What is it that you would want women to really, 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 like, if you could give them a superpower, or if you were their fairy godmother and you could give them a gift that they could take away that would be the most transformative, what would that be?
I would say it's seeing and truly experiencing your body as brilliant. And I've seen that alone can create transformation, because it shifts everything that we experience about our body, that we hear about our body, that we absorb from the society norms. And it brings us into a new relationship with the divine. And we think we need to fix our health because that's the way we've been taught. We have everything we already need within us to come back to our innate health because the body is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we could stop right there, but I don't think we will. And, my experience has been that at least the women that I work with, they really on a deeper level know that. But you use the terminology, societal norms. Like we move about and we live, surrounded by an outside in model, a hand over your authority to something and someone on the outside. I play women's ladies doubles, and it's just so interesting to watch the conversations that happen about, well, I did this and I tried that, and women come with this laundry list of symptoms, which to me are gentle and sometimes screamingly loud, messages, invitation to step into something else, to wake up, instead of something that needs to be fixed or changed. And I think that it is definitely possible to live in a society that sees things a lot differently than this and still have this experience of living that you're referring to. But do you see that as a challenge? That the message that's out there, the dominant message out there, is so contrary to what we're talking about.
Yeah, because there's a very big machine of financial interests at work to make women believe that they are broken, that midlife change was not part of the design, that our hormones somehow exist beyond divine intelligence. And even though they're inside of us, they seem to be external to us and something that we need to control and fix and manage. And that modern medicine will come in with great ideas and products that will fix us. And by the time we reach midlife change, we've been absorbing these messages for many things throughout our lives. And no one tells women or men that their bodies are brilliant. Like, you won't go to a doctor and hear that. And it's almost like the biggest secret of health, that we have this intelligence within our body, that healing is innate to our design. And so with this big machine that's really started in terms of menopause in the 1960s, and it keeps coming back in a sort of a slightly transformed way with a new message and a new push and a new fear for women to, get their hearts tied up in. And it's come back again, certainly in the UK, and I've seen it now arriving in the US, a whole new message of disease is inevitable. Menopause is this cause of disease. You need hormones if you want to stay healthy and live a long life. And it's all made up, but it serves interests out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the reality that we live in, and it goes beyond and before menopause. It is it's a that machine has been operating our whole lives. So yeah, I kind of what I was hearing, Tanya, is I think that for women to embrace their agency, to live with bodily sovereignty and beyond the body with agency and sovereignty, I feel there has to be a foundation of trust of something greater than those so-called authorities outside of us. And we're not used to living life as that divine engineering. We're not we're not encouraged, we're not taught, we're not modeled to come from that place of deeper intelligence that spins the planets, that makes a baby develop in a woman's womb while she's sleeping, while she's eating, that allows a cut to heal without us having to do a darn thing. I mean, you might have to go get stitches if it's bad enough, right? So there's certainly a place for emergency, crisis, major insults, major injuries, or a life of, poor habits that have just piled up to a level that the body, needs a little short-term assistance with. But but we've all seen that. We all know that after we get a cut stitched, we don't have to go to the doctor every day to have them, you know, promote healing. The body's going to bring the white cells, to eat up the bacteria. It's going to bring the red cells with the nutrients. It's going to lay down the collagen fibers without us having to think about it. Well, every single function in the body is occurring like that. Now we can certainly create some interference to that, or create blocks, or create challenges by stressful thinking in our lifestyle. And that's, but the body still is resilient and really capable of returning back to that state of harmony. So what do you think about, I think what I'm trying to say here is that developing a trust in the divine engineering of us, body, mind, spirit, soul. Right?
Yeah.
To me, we've got to rely on that, or all of that on the outside is going to look like that's where the answer is.
Yeah. I think what we're touching on is this idea of sovereignty and divine intelligence. And both have been hidden from us, really, from the time we're born. The idea that we can be sovereign individuals, that we can have an access to divine intelligence that's unlimited, that we have our own healing powers, that we can have our own spiritual connection to God or the universe, or however we want to call it. That's not in the interests of some other people. It's not in their interest for us to know that. And it seems like I could say these things again and again, and it will just go over some people's head when we don't actually experience what I've just shared on a personal level. And one of the amazing things about midlife change is that the body pushes us to experience sovereignty and divine intelligence. And if we see through even a crack of light to begin with, that there could be another path for us, apart from what I would term as sort of a slave medicine, which is just give me something to suppress the symptoms because I don't want to hear them, because the body's stupid, because it's malfunctioning, and I just need to get back to work. If we see that there may be a sovereign divine path, then this is going to preserve our health as we move forward. And it seems to me that as we come into midlife, the bubbling to the surface of this wisdom, the pushing us to realizing something about our own sovereignty and a divine connection, is designed to happen to serve us and serve the community around us. We are supposed to change, but the world has been telling us, don't change, right? Don't experience symptoms as anything else but malfunction. There can't be any intelligence in them. Just try to mute them, try to get on with your life, try to work in that soulless job that sucks out all your energy, running from task to task, you know, on the treadmill of life, just so that you can make ends meet, et cetera, et cetera. Just don't slow down. Just keep on going and don't change. And it gives us all these messages also physically. You know, I look often, I have, you know, 3 teenage kids, and I know that I could, if I wanted to, dress as my teenage daughters, because there is that option for me. And if a woman wants to do that, that's fine. But it's just like, why wouldn't I want to change? Why wouldn't I want to experience a higher consciousness than I had when I was younger? I'm designed to change, because we do move through this rite of passage and we get born into something else, which leads us to become an elder. And that's what society needs. That's what we need. But having sovereign, wiser women roaming the planet, it's apparently threatening. So, but we can step into that. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. That warms my heart. I so resonate with that. You know, I think that we are, as a society and as individuals, really inclined to want to make those symptoms go away instead of really embracing the reality that they are this invitation, right, to, you know, to step into our divinely assigned roles as elders. As you know, I like all the archetype of the crone, you know, and that is in our society not held up as something valuable. It's played up as, you know, you definitely don't want to go there. You know, you spoke about, you know, do we want to dress like a teenager? You know, and that level of sovereignty and agency and power, embracing our power. I find so many women that are at that crossroads in their life where they're empty nesters, they're retired, they're like myself, you know, a widow. And, you know, I say to them, like, what is your deepest desire? We haven't even allowed ourselves to touch that. I think we've been so busy as women, you know, not everybody, but as a rule, conditioned, you know, good girl conditioning. And I was raised by a registered nurse, and I got into healthcare. It's like constantly looking to help other people instead of, I just think menopause can be such a wake-up call to really reclaim, you know, our own path, our own purpose here. I love what you said about having this lived experience. I think it's really difficult. I know for me that many things were an intellectual, hey, I understand that, I resonate with that. But until I actually had the lived experience, um, it's kind of hard to really get real, to really bring that into your life. And my thinking as you were speaking is, how important is it to have community? A community of other women who actually see beyond the veil of, or have a grasp and an understanding of this machine, the the societal norms, the messages that are out there that are outside in, upside down, backwards, and have an agenda, to keep us from stepping into our true nature. And I feel like it's not, I don't think it's easy, and I wonder if it's even possible to really become who we truly are as women without community.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we have lost so much with the collapse of the extended family, the tribe, etc. And we're moving even further in modern society into the sort of cubicle living of separation, the individual, and work it out on your own. And luckily, at the same time, the forces that have created that can also, through technology, which we're using right now, create something incredible in terms of sharing of experience and knowledge, and even community, which for women who feel alone physically in their surroundings, they actually don't have to have that experience. And because our sense of self, our understanding of the body, our reliance on external sources to fix us through modern medicine is so pervasive, it's so inbred into, it's so integral in society. It takes bravery almost these days to step beyond that and to say, I think there's a different way. And unfortunately, what I've seen happen in the UK, and I believe it's now about to, explode in the US, around the menopause, the narrative around menopause and sort of the sense of malfunction and disease and etc. Women who are going back to a natural path and a desire to experience the body in all its brilliance and as a vessel for our spiritual existence in this life. They feel so alone because everyone else is saying, well, why aren't you taking hormones? Or why aren't you doing this or that to prevent disease, whatever it is? And I hear from lots of women that, they just feel that everyone is telling them they're crazy because they're seeking a different experience of midlife change. They're seeking a more meaningful one. They're seeking a chance to tune into their body. And there's this whole sort of other path of people who are just running through the medicalization of something that's so transformative, but they're not experiencing transformation because they're just suppressing this natural change that happens within us.
I think there is a level of bravery and courage required. And I think the path of, that path in the supportive community is we're innately gifted with bravery and courage. We have access to that. It doesn't have to be us, you know, it can be inspired by a community of other women on the same path. But truly, access to bravery and courage is available to us by this deeper intelligence that we are. We are that. And
Yeah.
I love your message. I appreciate all the effort that must have gone into writing your book. Um, all that research, I think is important to mention here that, we're having a conversation that's not just our opinion. I think, a lot of what we're speaking about is totally backed up, by science. And yet, even more powerful, right, is this divine, innate wisdom that everyone has had the experience of. But, can you speak a little bit more about how do you see, like maybe you have a case history of someone that you did some transformative coaching with that would come to mind, or however you want to share something that, you know, we know there's not tools and techniques and a formula for someone to enter their own path, but as an inspired um, sharing about how could a woman have more of the lived experience of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Perhaps I should share like my experience, and then I'm going to share two cases of women who I've worked with. So I mentioned a bit in the introduction, I started experiencing symptoms at the age of 43, felt like I was falling apart. I had no clue about perimenopause. I thought menopause, I was, a decade away. Why would I even consider that? And I was experiencing, I was getting sick a lot, and then some hair loss and lots of migraines and really severe mood swings and night sweats. And it took me a few years to discover that I was in perimenopause and what that was, which is this time of change leading up to the menopause, which could take up to 10 years. And I went on a journey of what we were discussing earlier, sort of a natural version of the allopathic model, believing that there was something outside of me that would come and fix me. So whether that would be a practitioner or whether that would be a potion or a pill. And I was more, like I said, I'm on the natural version of it, but I was still searching for the thing that would make me feel like myself, because I really didn't feel like myself. And I know lots of women going through midlife change don't feel like themselves. And we all want to just feel like ourselves again because we feel like we've sort of fallen off course. And even I, who used to be, lighthearted and happy and healthy and everything, was feeling like, what has happened? I've just been hit by something and I just need to be fixed. And after a few years, back in 2015, I came across the understanding of the 3 principles of innate health. And very soon, I had an insight about the nature of thought, which summed up was, you don't need to take your thinking seriously, and life would be easier if you don't. And that sounds very simple on the outside, but it hit me very profoundly, because at the time, I was feeling very burdened by a repetitive thought of I'm not enough. That I know many women come into midlife and experience this version of that thought for different reasons, we believe. And so my reason of I'm not enough came about because I was juggling a little business, trying to promote my book on motherhood. My kids were much younger then, and I just stopped being an at-home mom and trying to get back into the sort of swing of work and feeling very overwhelmed by everything and feeling not enough. And no one was telling me I'm not enough, but that thought landed in my head, and I believed it when it did. And then when I believed it, I felt really bad. And then when I felt really bad, I thought there must be something I need to do to stop making me feel bad. And then I was doing lots of things that I thought could make me feel better and try and change my idea about myself. Well, surely I am enough. And then I failed at those things, and then I felt even worse. I felt even worse. Even I'm not enough. Times 2, times 3. And I was just on this, repetitive path of I'm not enough, surely I'm enough, et cetera, trying to make myself feel better. And then I had this insight about the nature of thought. And I realized, when that thought comes into my head, I have a choice. I don't actually need to take it seriously. And in fact, I don't need to take any thought seriously when it comes into my head, good or bad, and what we would categorize as good or bad. And I realized at the time that I would probably heal my PMS, which at the time I was experiencing 2 weeks in every month of PMS, of emotional and physical symptoms of PMS. And what happened was, within days, all my symptoms just disappeared. And so the night sweats went away, skin problems went away, eczema, I had really bad eczema on my hands, the migraines, the mood swings, all the PMS symptoms. And that set me off on a journey to start sharing what I do today. So people may say, well, how does that work? How did that fix your hormones? And here's the thing, our hormones are, as I said earlier, they're not detached from divine intelligence. My hormones aren't running some sort of like crazy plan to make me feel bad. When we see the body holistically, we understand that if we, in our innocence, and innocence is a really important word here, because I don't believe anyone wants to create discomfort or disease through, on purpose. So through our innocence, we create stress through misunderstanding of thought and divine intelligence. And that creates an imbalance in our body. And that is expressed through symptoms. And the symptoms are only ever trying to compensate for the imbalance that we've created somewhere upstream, or they're messages to try and wake us up and to encourage us to come back into balance and coherence. And when we're in that coherence, the body just knows how to function smoother. It doesn't mean that at the same time that I had that insight, I had to clear up my whole diet completely. I had to start running marathons. I had to, have 3 hours out in the sun, or whatever, that people may have, as their mantra for health. I live a generally healthy life, luckily. And my misunderstanding of the nature of thought was creating this imbalance in the body, creating symptoms. And at midlife, when the body is going through this sensitive time of change, when we live a life out of balance, these symptoms come to the surface quicker than perhaps in our 20s and 30s. And it's very similar for women who've experienced pregnancy and postpartum, or even remember their adolescent years. These are all sensitive times. And if we live lives out of balance, we will experience symptoms very quickly, because the body is trying to bring us back into balance. That's always the only reason. It's not because our body is betraying us. It's because the body is trying to bring us back into balance. So I'll give 2 examples that I've had permission from these women to share their stories in the past, so it's fine. One woman came to me. She hadn't experienced menstrual cycle for about 6 years, and she had a suspected early menopause. It wasn't confirmed, but that was her fear. And we simply, through coaching, she was in her 30s, and simply through coaching, we were able to bring her body back into coherence, back into balance. Her menstrual cycle returned. Within a few months, she was able to get pregnant, have a healthy child, and she's thriving. And so is the child. And it seems like something that medicine can't explain, because of course medicine was like, oh, you need to take, let's try this test and that test and try these, medicines and those medicines to get your menstrual cycle back. And all we needed to do, and she did it, I just, shined light in a certain direction so that she could see something fresh. All we did was bring her body back into balance. And when the body comes back into balance, it has energy again for the menstrual cycle and for living a healthy life, symptom-free. So that's one example. And then another example from a woman who was in perimenopause and experiencing months and months of bleeding. I believe it was 9 months of bleeding. Then she'd got it tested out and they couldn't find anything. But it is an experience that's a symptom that some women experience during perimenopause, either sort of flooding or bleeding that's almost nonstop for months. And she took my course, in which I was talking about things that we're talking about here on this podcast. And by the end of the course, her bleeding had stopped. And so, of course, she'll say, well, I can't, scientifically say that, it was because your course, but it's a big coincidence that it happened this way. And so, I see this time and time again with women that they have symptoms, and their symptoms can appear very complicated, months of bleeding, no periods for 6 months, for 6 years, or, anxiety, night sweats, hot flushes, insomnia, etc., etc. And the good news is that it doesn't matter how complex our symptoms appear. The way to healing is always simpler than we think. And the way to healing is through coming back into balance, back to our true nature. And it's only through a shift in consciousness. That's all it takes. There's no hard work involved. There's no complicated journey. There's no tasks that need to be fulfilled every day. There's not a new language you need to learn. There's no new diet, etc., etc. We come back into balance, and the body knows how to do the rest.
Oh, Tania, I don't even want to comment on that, because that's so beautiful and so rich with so many different things that I could pull out of there. But I trust the innate intelligence within our listeners, that something in what you just shared will land with them, and that there isn't anything they have to do other than people may find that they want to engage more frequently or deeper in this conversation that we're having, that can allow them to have the lived experience of a shift in consciousness, which is what we're doing, is, understanding thoughts believed. I do think that some version of I'm not enough is pretty ubiquitous, at least in the community that I work with, and myself. I personally recently had an insight around my made up story that I wasn't a good enough daughter, at, in spite of my own mother telling me that I was the greatest thing that ever happened to her. And that I had been struggling with kind of a new set of symptoms that would fall under a diagnosis of something that established medicine would say, well, you're going to be living with that forever. And indeed, the coincidence of me having a realization that, oh, perhaps that's a made up, believed thought. I'm not a good enough daughter. And for me, I just decided, it occurred to me out of nowhere, right? My wisdom showing up, having my back, to try an experiment of, well, what if I just assumed that my mom was right and I was wrong? I'm more than good enough. And within 48 hours, like, all of those nasty, pretty serious, scary looking symptoms, like, began to dissolve. Now, I don't want any listener here to um, beat themselves up, or feel like, oh, you know, it's it's got to look like that, or even possibly the thinking like that's not possible for me, maybe for her, you know. um like you said, like, if there's just a crack that allows a little bit of light in, that's my hope, that's my wish, that's my prayer for people listening. And if the listener here would like to engage with you to explore all of this beautiful shift in consciousness that we're talking about, I know that your book is amazing. I personally haven't taken your course, but I'm planning to. And can you talk about, the the opportunities that you offer for women to, experience what we're talking about on a deeper level, and
Yeah.
in addition, how they might connect with you?
Yeah. I just want to go back to something that you said, which is so hopeful, that no matter how complicated we think our issue is and our symptoms are, healing is so simple. And even from listening to what we've shared here, shifts can occur. And, I just was in touch with a woman who reached out to me on Facebook a few days ago. And she said, I listened to another podcast that I'd recorded. And she said, and I just burst into tears. And then my periods, that she was having very painful, heavy periods, also in perimenopause, she said they totally normalized. And this was sort of about 3 months ago or something like that. And she said they completely normalized. And she knew in that moment that something had shifted in her. And I love that so much, because yes, you can reach out, and I'm very happy to work with women. I'm very happy for women to do my course. I'm very happy for women to buy my book. There are many different levels that you can invest in, if you like, and to receive support. And also, this may be enough. This may be enough to create insight. So you can reach out to me through thewiserwoman.com. There are details there of my book, which is available in all bookstores, and my 3-week online course, which I've been running since 2015, and the coaching that I offer. And there are tons of resources on my blog that you can read, you can listen, you can watch, and you never know when a shift can occur. So thewiserwoman.com, or you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, and I'm always happy to connect. I'm always happy to answer questions and to keep on sharing what I've seen to be so helpful for so many women.
Yes. Oh, I love what you said, Tania, because we don't know. We don't know how the divine intelligence that we all are will touch a listener, how it will manifest for them. And, but they will know. They will, showing up with an open heart and open mind, you know, show up, be yourself, be present, see what happens. Um, Very beautiful. And I can't tell you, like, how excited I was to meet you for the first time and to engage in this conversation. And I just want to thank you for what you do for women, and how eloquently and how beautifully you share your message. It definitely, this conversation definitely touched me, and my hope and prayer is that the same thing occurs for people who listen to this. So thank you for being here today, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for reaching out.